Hey Charlie, thank you so much for joining me for this video. So I know as somebody who has gone from a complete novice rider, like to the point of falling over on my bike, not being able to clip in the spring, to doing a 500-mile ride, that getting the insights that you can provide in this video would have been so helpful. So I really appreciate your time because I think this is going to be really helpful for the people watching this who maybe feel that anxiety of a big ride that they want to, attack, but they're not sure how to get started, what they should be doing. So I can't thank you enough for being on this video.
Oh, my pleasure to be here, Eric. And I remember that year too, that when you weren't so prepared, you definitely suffered. And the funny thing is, you got through it.
Mm-hmm.
You actually did it, but you didn't enjoy it as much. And, when you got to camp, I remember a couple of days, you were just completely wasted.
Yeah.
And you can avoid that with what we're about to do here, and it's like talk about the training and preparing for it.
Absolutely. And what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be going over a training plan, but also talking about nutrition and mindset and just everything together that you really need to be considering when you're attacking a long distance ride that's hopefully not a few weeks away, but you've got some time to train for and be ready for. So, Charlie, what we're looking at right now is a training schedule that you created for this 7-day ride that goes over 500 miles. I know one of the first things you talked about was that this doesn't necessarily apply just to a multi-day ride. This can apply to different types of long distance riding. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, this definitely will prepare you for the Empire State Ride and a multi-day ride. But, if you do this training plan, you'll also be well prepared for a single-day Century ride. So the preparation is similar. The big difference really is in between those two types of events is, how you ride the event itself. Once you get there on a one-day ride, you can leave it all out there and you can make some mistakes, some nutrition mistakes. You can do things because the next day is a rest day. You don't have to be on your bike. But when you're doing a multi-day ride, you really got to pay attention to what you're doing because tomorrow's another day.
Okay. One of the things on this training plan that you have here, and we have a bunch of free resources we can share, and the description of this video will have a link to it, is you've kind of created a little bit of a vocabulary. And forgive me, is this kind of industry standard, or is this something that at Carmichael Training Systems that you guys have developed, or when you're talking about recovery miles, endurance miles, tempo, and all that?
Yeah, that's a great question. This is Carmichael Training Systems specific zones, and this is the way that Carmichael Training Systems describes the zones. It's not very different than other coaching companies or other physiologists would say. It might be zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, zone 4, zone 5. Some people call steady state threshold, tempo sub threshold. So it really is just CTS nomenclature there.
Okay. So when somebody's looking through this, they can kind of quickly see that in the parentheses, there'll be different things explaining kind of essentially what zone that you would be in. So if it says T here, that means you're at tempo, you're at about a 7 out of 10 on effort, and uncomfortable conversation. I like the way that you guys have the talking ability written down here. It makes it pretty simple.
Yeah.
So if somebody is looking at this, what is the rationale behind this? Obviously, if you take a quick look, you can see that Mondays are completely rest days. Wednesdays, there's some rest on Fridays, and it kind of seems like it ramps up. I know it's not new for people, the idea that your body needs rest, but why is that so important if somebody's doing a long distance training?
Well, rest is in the recovery, and the rest period is where your body really adapts from the stress that you're putting on it during the workouts. Rest is super underrated. You have to make sure that, when you're doing the workouts, that you're actually doing them in a quality way, that you're not too tired. And so that's important for the rest as well. Riding 5 days a week is generally as much as people can do also. So, you have to think that this is a kind of a generic plan. And, I'm assuming that, people are going to be able to ride 5 days a week. Some people can ride more than that, but 5 days is plenty. And if you look at the kind of like the philosophy of this plan, and it's just one of the principles of endurance training, which is progression. So if you kind of look, everything progresses throughout the 22 weeks. For example, if you're looking at Thursday on, you have, 40 to 60 minutes of endurance miles, and then the next week it's 60 to 75 minutes. And then the next week it's 60 to 90 minutes. Mm-hmm. And then the following week, if you notice, it's a rest week. So we're doing it in blocks of training, blocks of 3 weeks at a time, where we progress the training, hopefully get you plenty fatigue so that on the 4th week or at the end of the 3 week, you need a week of easy riding to kind of recover. And this is where the big adaptations actually come in. So it's basically 3 weeks of progression and drills and volume and intervals, followed by a week of nice and easy recovery rest to get you ready for the following 3 week. And so that's how it's built up. So for progression,
I feel like there were some things that you had mentioned where, as far as we talked before, you have like 3 by 6 minute, 4 by 5 minutes, 6 by 30 seconds. What do you mean by that? As far as like, you have one that says 60 minutes. I'm looking at one of my highlighted here, F6 here on that Thursday. It's 60 minutes EM. So I know that means endurance miles. It's about a 5 or 6 effort, but it says 2 by 10 T. So what does that 2 by 10 stand for on there?
So basically that ride means that the total ride time is going to be 60 minutes. And you're going to be riding in endurance miles with the exception of 2 10-minute tempo intervals that you're going to do with 5 minutes recovery in between. So that's what it means. It means that the whole ride is 60 minutes. The intensity is endurance miles, with the exception of those 2 10-minute intervals that you're going to do at a little higher intensity, which is at tempo. So instead of a RP scale of 5 to 6 tempo, you're going to be more like 7, 7.5 on that.
So in that particular case, if you wanted to go from the 15 to the 25-minute mark, you ride 10 hard minutes, then you might have 5 minutes of recovery, and then you do another 10 minutes hard.
Exactly. And so let's say you rode, you warmed up or you rode for 20 minutes and you're riding at endurance miles, and all of a sudden you're going to do you choose when you're going to do your 2 by 10 minutes, and you do them together. You're going to go the first 10 minutes hard, recover 5 minutes, and then do another 10 minutes. And then the rest of the 60 minutes, whatever's left, you do it at endurance miles.
Okay. I'm just going to kind of go through here, see if there's anything else that kind of strikes me, because I know for you could probably look at this thing and immediately know what everything says. But same thing over here. I mean, just to kind of repeat it again, same as far as endurance miles. So you have that 5 or 6 effort level. But you got a 3 by 8, and it says that it's SS. So that one's a steady state, as we can see down here.
Exactly.
So this is the same thing. So if I was to guess, you could be riding 20, 30 minutes on this one. And then that's when you'd start your 3 by 8 with the 4-minute breaks in between the 3 sessions where you're going hard for 8 minutes, essentially.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
And then you have you're going to do 8 minutes with 4 minutes recovery, 8 minutes, 4 recovery 3 times. And then whatever's left of the 90 minutes is all that endurance miles. So you're going to ride easy the rest of the way.
Okay. When you're talking about like easy spin, right, is that just basically usually on a stationary bike and you're just essentially getting your legs moving? Or, I mean, what do you describe that as?
Yeah, that's active recovery. Basically, it's you could almost call that's basically a recovery ride. 30 to 60 minutes is like, it's almost like riding to the coffee shop, having a coffee, riding back. It's active recovery. Instead of being completely, at rest, you're basically, riding a little bit, getting a little blood through the legs and recovering actively instead of passively.
Okay. Just when I'm looking at this is one of the misconceptions that I had was if you are riding, and in my case, it was, going into this event that's 80-mile days. I am like, how am I ever going to train for this? Because I thought that I was going to have to ride 80-mile days, 5 days in a row, 6, 7 days in a row before this ride even happens to be like mentally and physically capable of doing this. From talking to you since then, I realized that's not the case. What's the general rule of thumb? Like, let's say somebody's training for a century ride. How many miles should they at least be able to get in before that ride starts?
You know, there's, it really depends on the goal of the rider. You know, and this is where, you know, generic training plans, you know, are built for, you know, everybody who's going to do the Empire State Ride in this case. And as you know, there's, you know, some pretty fast riders, and then there's some riders that are not very fast. So, you know, some people are finishing it in, you know, 6 hours in a day, and some people are taking 10 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So you know, so the answer to your question, like on a century ride, if you want to go to a century ride and be in the first group and be there and, you know, have your best performance ever, it's probably a good idea to do a century ride before it.
Okay.
And, you know, as maybe of a test, or maybe even a couple of century rides before it, depending on how well you want to, you know, what's the time that you want to do, what's your goal. On the other hand, if you're a person who just wants to enjoy the day, get through it, you don't have any goals about time, you're not competing or anything, you want to do it, and you probably don't need to do more than, you know, 60 or 75 miles. You'll get through it on that day. You'll get that last 40 or that last 25. It's not optimal. I wouldn't recommend it, but it can be done. And I guess what I'm trying to point out is that, you know, whether it's a century ride or an Empire State Ride, how you train is going to depend on, or I should say, let me back up. Your goals are going to dictate more how much or how hard you have to train.
Okay.
For the Empire State Ride, this particular training plan is made to, you know, get everybody across the line. It's not going to make everybody incredibly fast, but what it's going to do, it's going to avoid kind of what happened to you in that first year, where, you know, you get through it and then you get to camp and you're so tired, you're so wasted that all you can do is get in your tent and lay down.
Mm-hmm.
And what's happening then is you're laying down, you know, without, you know, all of the recovery protocols that we may, you know, talk about, you know, getting clean, you know.
I got clean, Charlie. I cleaned after every day. Maybe I didn't stretch. Maybe I didn't, you know, eat enough, or, you know, pay attention to my nutrition, but I cleaned.
Yeah. You know, but, you know, all of the, you know, really important, you know, pieces of recovery that you need to do as soon as you get off the bike, you know, and then, you know, there's the social aspect of it, you know, and, you know, the better you feel, you know, the more you're going to enjoy the post-ride activities as well. So okay. I think that's what, when you talk about, so to finish your question or answer your question, you know, your goals will dictate, you know, how you really want to train. And then that's where one-on-one and personal coaching can be better for somebody who has a real goal for for a century ride, like a performance goal, or even for an Empire State Ride. You know, I'm coaching 2 folks right now who have done it before, and their goals are to finish it a little faster so that they have a little more time at the end of the day, you know, to enjoy the camping and enjoy, you know, a little bit of yoga or whatever the activities are going on. And that's their goal. And so, you know, they're training a little different than somebody that might be doing something that just wants to get them, you know, through the event.